I was born ready.
Oh boy. All right, here we go. Take it away, Arrow.
And that's why you create documentaries the way that you do, because you're ready to rock at any time.
Pretty much. You kind of have to be, right?
I tell you what, you've got a subject here that was at one point in time in history, it was the only thing people talked about in the late night hours, the truckers driving across the country. And now you've got something that people are going to be talking about at the water cooler, at work. They're going to be everywhere because you take us right in there.
Isn't it unbelievable? I just said this yesterday. I said, never in 100 million years did I ever think that I would be creating a documentary on a UFO crash with live aliens seen reportedly walking through the town. It sounds so outlandish. It sounds so unbelievable. And now here we are.
How did you go into this? Because I'm sure there were a lot of naysayers going, James, are you sure? What's your proof here?
I had my neighbor who's a big fan. He loved the phenomenon. He said, James, you lost me on this one. I said, Jamie, Jamie, he goes, you're a good friend and I respect your work a lot, but you lost me on this one. I'm a little disappointed that you're doing this. I said, Jamie, I totally respect your opinion. I respect your position. I completely understand why you feel the way you do. Sit tight, wait until, and come and listen to some of these eyewitness reports and then draw your conclusion. And so I did. And he stood at arm's length for about 6 months while we were putting this thing together. And he came over with his two sons, and he watched it and he said, I stand corrected. Wow, this is quite remarkable. And so I totally understand that position. I myself had it. I learned about this case when I was making Out of the Blue in the late 90s. And my fellow producer, Tim Coleman, and he said, James, there's this case of this UFO in this town of Varginha in Brazil and this live aliens. And I said, Tim, please, I'm not wasting 1 second on this ridiculous story. There's no way it happened. And I'm not kidding you. I didn't look into it for over 10 years.
Wow.
Then I was going to Brazil in 2010, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine who's very high up on the food chain in the entertainment industry. His name's Jeff Sagansky. He ran like Sony Pictures, big shot. And he's got a kind of a quiet, secretive interest in the phenomenon, much less so quietly these days, more public about it. But at the time, I don't think he wanted to jeopardize what he was doing. He was quietly behind the scenes helping me. And anyway, he said, you got to go check out this. You're going to Brazil. You got to check out Varginha. And I said, oh, God, Jeff, you mean that case with a UFO crash? And he said, yeah, no, I'm telling you, there's something to it. And I went, sure, there's something to it. And sure, I'll look into it. And I had no intention of looking into it. Hung up the phone. I went to Brazil and I was going to give a presentation at a conference in Peruíbe regarding Way to the South, regarding my film, I Know What I Saw.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about this event I did at the National Press Club with Leslie Kean, pushing for government transparency, yada, yada, yada. And while I was there at this conference, I met a couple of witnesses from this alleged Varginha case, and that piqued my interest. And then here I was 12 years later, made a full-blown documentary with the help of my co-producer, Marco Leal. And now I'm absolutely convinced. In fact, I haven't seen one person to see it and walk away saying that, that this event didn't happen. Yeah. There's just too much. I mean, look, the whole town of Varginha was cordoned off, military trucks. Everybody saw something. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of everybody. And if they didn't see something, their friend did, or their cousin did, or their brother, or their father, or their, you know what I mean? It's remarkable. And how they managed to cover it up for as long as they have is staggering to me. Mm-hmm. But they did.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about this region of Brazil, I always think of the Central America and stuff like that. Did you find anything in there that would connect the Mayans or the Aztecs, because they believed they were that connection to the outer limits?
I feel bad saying this because I historically have not educated myself on the level that I would like mm-hmm. with the connection of these dating back millennia. I can say that when I was in Africa investigating that landing case, and that was another case that I just didn't believe at the school, mm-hmm. aerial school, Ruwa, Zimbabwe. I just couldn't. I was like, how could a UFO land at a school with 100 witnesses and the whole world? I had a really hard time with it. Right? Of course, I'm convinced that it happened now. But in any case, while I was there in Africa, I got these drawings from the children I was looking at, and and then right after that, I took photographs of the drawings. Right after that, I went to Australia and I was investigating this alleged landing case at a school outside Melbourne. It's commonly referred to as the Westall UFO incident that happened in 1966. So I'm over there and I'm like, got my little photographs of the creatures, that alleged creatures that the children drew, and I'm looking at them and I'm sharing them. And this guy says, "Oh, have you not seen the Wandjina cave paintings dating back thousands of years?" I
Mm.
said, "No, I've never heard of them." And he looked them up and he showed me, and the resemblance of the creatures that were on these cave walls thousands of years ago were so similar to what the children drew that I had goosebumps on my whole body. So I know that I could have answered it, around in a roundabout fashion, your question, but I'm convinced that there is a link, and this has been going on millennia. Jacques Vallée wrote a great book called Wonders in the Sky that makes these connections, but I myself am just not educated enough to comment intelligently on that aspect of the phenomenon. But I do believe that it's true. There
So,
is a connection.
if it was a Brazilian military secret, how did you get through the door? Was it just by the conversation of the common man?
Nearly impossible.
Yeah.
It was 12 years of knocking on doors, and I'm not kidding you. I went to downtown and I was trying to find some of the witnesses. I was trying to find the sister of the military officer who died after he handled this creature, Marta Tavares. She'd been off the radar. The researchers and investigators had gone off the radar. One of them died. Um, and I had this guy. He was the audio technician. He was from Rio, and he was it's kind of like the Roswell in Brazil. In other words, a lot of the Brazilians had heard about it and they kind of laughed it off and it was a joke and all this stuff. And so he didn't believe he was Brazilian, and he was like, "Yeah, I've heard about the case, but come on, that didn't happen." And so I'm knocking on doors and he's looking at me like I was out of my mind. Like, "What are you doing? You're just knocking on random doors. You're talking to people in the downtown plaza." Like, I said, "Well, I got to start somewhere." And we literally did that and made leads, connect to other people. There wasn't a single eyewitness account in the film that we didn't have to fight to get. And I mean fight for years. The doctors that either allegedly took x-rays of this being, that doctor, we found him, Marco Leal found him, my fellow producer in Brazil, probably 8 years ago.
Mm.
He was still working for the hospital. He confirmed the event. He said, "I'll never go on camera. It'll never happen." 7 years we worked on him. The other military, his name is Military X in the film. I'm not sure if you gentlemen have seen it yet. Military X was directly involved with the transportation of one of the creatures. Military X went on the record in 1996 with a fellow gentleman named Victor Paccaccini, who was a Brazilian UFO researcher, but he only did it with the intention that it's never going to be released, that if anything happened to him, that researcher knew that they would release that video, that was a sort of security protection for him.
Wow.
So a couple of guys did. But we managed to get him 26 years later to go on the record. Granted, we disguised his identity, but he's a confirmed legitimate witness who drove this thing around. And it's unbelievable listening to his story. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. In my 30 years, I've never heard anything like it. It's absolutely riveting, and it puts me on the edge of my seat. The doctor that worked on the gentleman who died, the doctor that took x-rays of the alleged being, the reports of the stench, the smell.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. It's a remarkable case, and I'm hoping that once this film comes out, it'll overturn more testimony. And I want to know the Americans' involvement and where this debris and material and bodies ultimately ended up.
Yep.
And that's something that's going to be an ongoing investigation.
The documentary and film we're talking about is Moment of Contact. How does this change science and history?
Well, I mean, it's one thing to report unknown objects like we have that were on the front page of the New York Times, the infamous Tic Tac and David Fravor. It's another thing to have bodies and debris from the craft. I mean, that's a game-changing event. That is definitive proof for the first time in history, well, Roswell, first time in history that, we have definitive proof that we're not alone in the universe. And that is a game changer. So there have been hints. There's been confirmation that UFOs are real. That's been happening here in the United States and around the world. They've said in the United States that it's not us, and we don't think it's the Russians, or we don't think it's the Chinese. Therefore, it's sort of in the category of other.
Yep.
But having debris in bodies is, I mean, anyone will say, whether you believe this or not, if you can just suspend judgment and suggest for a moment that it did happen, that would probably be considered among just about everybody on the planet as one of the most significant stories in modern history.
Wow.
I mean, you can't deny that, right? The only question is, did it happen? And if it did happen, where's that debris? Where are those bodies today? And who has the authority to release them?
Jeez, my God, that's why people have got to connect up with this. Is there a website that you can find out more about you as well as this project?
Well, you can Google Moment of Contact, and the trailer will pop up. And in the trailer link will be information where you can get the film. It comes out October 18th. We have a premiere in Los Angeles. We still have some seats available. It's at LA Live, October 17th. That's a Monday at 6:30 p.m. LA Live in downtown Los Angeles, October 17th. The film comes out October 18th on Amazon, iTunes, Fandango, Google Play, all those transactional downloads.
I love it. James, you got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
You be brilliant today, okay?
Oh, thanks. You too.